we going, everybody? Out in the veggie garden, we had a wonderful Christmas, and I hope you all did too. And our thoughts and prayers go out to those less fortunate ones around the world. And we should take advantage and appreciate everything that we have in front of us for those who are blessed with the vegetable garden. And for those who are not and want to have a go, well, it's not that hard. It really isn't. As long as you've got a little space or even a pot plant, you can make it work for yourself. So please give it a go. And that's what I've been doing here, trying to educate everybody and myself, in fact, on learning anything and everything about Mother Nature and how things grow and what we need to do and what we shouldn't be doing to make things flourish in our garden. Because at the end of the day, it's all about nutritional density. The value of the nutrient in the food that we eat has to come out of your garden without any toxic chemical intervention. And I'm talking about synthetic stuff that is not good for your garden. And I'm referring to the microbes in the soil, the fungi and the bacteria that does the work. Now, you're looking at a raised bed that has literally depleted. It has sunk into the ground. The plants have thrived out of it. They've done wonderfully well. We've come to the end of them. And now we're going to start planting this bed again with another batch of vegetables. But before we do that, let me run you through what we've got in this bed here. Now, we started off with some straw at the base, then we had cocoa and compost, and then on top of it, we put our planting mix, our most popular planting mix, and then top dressed it with some more straw, bamboo mulch. Now, before we go into preparing this, let's have a look at the texture of the soil underneath. And in fact, this is the bed that when I dug up through our workshops that we were doing in preparing beds, we took a handful of soil out of this and we found at least 20 to 30 worms. Now, these were composting worms, not earthworms, but they were in there doing a wonderful job, and hence why it's depleted so rapidly or within 6 months. So I'm hoping the worm's in here. Otherwise, we're in big trouble. So where should we dig? We'll not dig here, because here we found a snail, little baby snail. Okay, gone. Ooh, and we found a caterpillar too. There's one there. That's how we do it. Let's have a look. First lift, have a look at this. Worms, worms. Over here, worms. Let's just crack this one open carefully. Let's see what's going on inside. It's a smorgasbord. It's a party going on here, folks. There are worms everywhere. Look at them, just slithering away. They're doing a great job in breaking down the organic matter in this soil. Look at that, a handful of worms. Literally, if you don't have 25 worms in your hand when you dig up like that, your soil's not alive. And that's what you want to see in all your beds. This is what I've been doing and working on my garden beds to achieve this. And I've got to thank my mate Craig too there, folks, because he's been pushing me to do a no-dig garden, and I've been struggling to get my head around it, only because I've been brought up to dig the garden. But when you don't dig it, well, you're not disturbing these little creatures here and all the other life in the soil as well. And it's so important that you don't, and you allow them just to keep on feeding and composting it for you the way nature intended. Look at that. Look at these. Just look at these. I can't cover them. They're going to dig their way back into the ground again. Have a look at them. There's hundreds of them in this little corner here, just in this little pocket, I should say. So this entire bed is, needless to say, full of life. Full of life. You can see it wiggling away. They're everywhere. Just dig one more. Maybe you think I just planted them. Here, let's go here. Worms just there. Worms everywhere. Look at this. Juvenile worms, and there'll be larger worms down below, further down. Look at this, full of worms everywhere. Beautiful. This is composting. This is like a big compost bin, but it's better than that because we can plant into this, and we're going to keep growing and planting into it. So what are we doing now? Well, we're going to be preparing this bed to raise it. So what I do here is just layer it. Now, we've got our composting facility going on down there, the whole life of it. And also, before we go there, this is a leaf cutting from the big Malacca tomato that I did a few weeks ago. Well, I won't say a few, maybe a couple of weeks ago or so. We got to lift this one out of the ground because we're going to fill it up to about here, not all the way to the top. We're going to put about 6 inches, 150 mil of soil and compost. So let's see, well, this is alive. Well, let's see how many roots it's actually taken on. And carefully pop it out. We're just going to raise it above the ground level. Let's just break up the soil a little bit like that. And sorry to all those little worms down there that I'm actually disturbing. Look at this. These are all the roots developing on it. I'm going to try not to break it. Oh, it's going to fall apart anyway. Well, there we are. It's taken off all the new roots. That's just from a leaf cutting. Remember that, a leaf. Not a stem from the plant. It's an actual old leaf, and it's turned itself into a stem. And that now will grow on and become a full-fledged plant of its own with fruit and everything as well. So we're going to put this aside so we can top dress this. You want to learn how to create life in your soil the way I have just done here? Well, these are the simple steps that you need to follow. So we're working with existing garden beds, not a new garden bed from scratch. You've got an existing bed, you've got to top dress it. Now, the amount you put on top can vary. It doesn't have to be exactly to what I'm doing, but this is the layers that I create. I start off with superfood, a handful or 2 handfuls per square meter. So this is a square meter, and I like putting about 2 handfuls. You can put 1, that's enough. That's all you need with the superfood. Next, you add a handful of black grit as well on top of your existing garden bed, and that's what I'm doing here. Our rock mineral. Just a handful of this is all you need, like that. I know some of you put a lot more than that, up to you, but a handful is sufficient. Next, we start adding our mediums on top of that. Next, we're gonna add our layers of medium. I start with a bit of cocoa, like this. You can put 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters worth of cocoa. This is a beautiful medium to hold moisture. It's not good for the top, it's good for in the ground. It's a base part that we start with, and you layer it like that beautifully. So there's 1 bag there. In fact, I might do 2, because I've got plenty of room to fill. This one's a bit drier. That's okay. Spread it out evenly like that. So remember, we've got our organic matter at the bottom. Now, if you've got a bed that's got nothing in it, and I'm talking about a raised bed, you start off with a bale of straw at the bottom of this, about 2/3 of the height. It'll be about this height where your straw should be at before you start adding your compost and your planting mix on top of it. So in this case here, our straw at the bottom was already added. It's depleted. Our compost and planting mix have sunk down with it as well. And you saw all the life in there. So now what we've done is the cocoa. And next we're adding, I didn't bring a secateur or anything to cut this open, so don't get upset that I'm tearing the bag. This is our compost. So we add a layer of compost, and between each layer, folks, I highly recommend you hydrate it. Sometimes the mix can be a little bit dry. This is just a little bit on the dry side. I had to let it out for too long and the sun's dehydrated it. So let's hydrate this. I've got a different wand here. This one's actually been buckled in, folks. I actually bumped it and I've concaved it so the water pressure is quite harsh rather than soft and gentle. And it's important to get it hydrated because you need the moisture to get down there. Remember, it's actually quite wet underneath, so the moisture from underneath will get absorbed like a bit of a wicking style upwards through the mulch, through the cocoa, but then you still need to hydrate it from above as well. So the water one to start with, like that. Now while that soaks and you're doing your layers, this is what I like doing. I like to layer it like as a lasagna, and that includes the black grit and the superfood. Superfood, for those who don't know what it is, it's a frass made by Soldier Fly, and there's a specific way that we make it, one of a kind in the world. It almost looks like black grit, the fine stuff, because we've got a coarse version, and that brown stuff that you see in there is the chitin, which is the shell of the insect or the larvae that sheds its skin as it grows, and that acts as a mechanism to trigger the plant's defense to go and protect itself. So it actually grows stronger and healthier and stops any pests and diseases getting to it easily. So we just hydrate that lightly, a bit more like this. And then we start layering our planting mix. Now the planting mix is where all the magic happens, folks. This is where all the life is. I mean, the compost is fantastic as well because there is compost in the planting mix. Cookie, look at the cookie. Beautiful stuff. That is going to hold moisture for us. I'm going to crumble it up a little bit because I don't want it too large, but that will hold an amazing amount of water and release it like a sponge does when everything around it is dry. So, and with the planting mix, you want to get at least 4 to 6 inches. Why this is lumpy, I had the bag open, left it out in the garden, and it got rained in, and that's what happens when it gets hydrated. See that? That's beautiful. That is what you want to see it doing. Forming like clay does, but it just breaks away beautifully like that. And it's exactly how we want the medium to function. And really, at the end of the day, how much you put of compost and or planting mix depends on how high you need to raise it. I can keep going all the way to the top, and I don't need to go all the way to the top because I've got plenty of growing medium down below. And these walls will act as protection, especially where we live here, because it gets really windy. So while the plants are small, they get a little bit of protection on the sides, which is good for the plants. And we've got plenty of roots down below, or soil down below, for the plants to grow, as you saw earlier. One more bag of planting mix, and I'll be satisfied with the height of it all. You can add more compost if you like, and if you really love the cocoa, well, add more of that down at the bottom. But for me, I love the planting mix, folks. And I know a lot of you love it too, those who have. Please share your results and your comments on and your views on our planting mix. I'd love to hear from you what sort of results you've had in your garden bed with our soil medium that we have created. And there we are. One more thing. Yeah, I get a bit excited with this stuff. I reckon just one more handful of superfood. And we need to hydrate this as well, even though it's already a little bit moist. It's important to hydrate it because we're going to put our mulch on top of this. And if you haven't seen me do the mulch, you might think, oh, how simple is that? Just spread some mulch over the top. Well, not exactly. That's not how I do my mulch. I start with the mulch in a wheelbarrow and I soak it for as long as possible. Minimum 2 or 3 hours, folks, minimum. But I soak it for at least, well, this one in particular, I've been soaking for about 2 weeks. So that mulch is completely inoculated with, you guessed what, with our EcoButch and Liquid Gold. And look at that, we've got beans growing out of it. You gotta love it. So this is our bean straw. It's been sitting in here for a couple of weeks now, and it stinks like those night carts. Oh! And what happens here when you do this, you're inoculating it with all the good microbes, you're activating it, and it's going to have the decomposing process. So when you spread it out on top of your garden bed, you're telling all the life in the soil that there's a new party in town. They're going to say, hey guys, there's some good food coming in here, let's get up there and start feeding. Hence why you saw those wonderful worms in the bed that we had underneath here. And that's how all my beds are. I was planting out the beds on the ground as well, and because they're directly on the ground, I found some big chunky earthworms just below the surface, about 4 inches below the surface, and they are doing a great job because they really help to aerate the soil as well. They tunnel through the soil, they leave deposits, and they go back there and feed again, and they attract other pests. So they do a really good job in looking after your bed. But the only way you're going to get that is by using quality products. And every time you use, and for those who haven't seen me say this or heard me say this before, it's for you guys out there because everybody else knows what I'm going to say now. Every time you use a synthetic fertilizer, you're disconnecting your plant from the soil. Yeah, it's growing in the soil. Look, it'll get some nutrients from the ground as well, but what you're doing is disconnecting the life in the soil, and that's the good bacteria, the microbes and the fungi, from being able to connect to the roots of the plant and feed and exchange feeds. The plant does photosynthesizing. You know, it creates sugars and all those wonderful nutrients through the sun, pushes them down into the soil, and in return it gets what nutrients it needs from the microbes. And when you use a synthetic fertilizer, well, that connection is broken, and then they become reliant on the drugs. And if you stop using the drugs, what happens? You have withdrawal symptoms. Then your plants get sick, they go backwards, and you wonder why they're struggling. And then you go back for more drugs, and you start using fertilizers and fungicides and insecticides that are toxic, and it's just a spiraling downward turn of no success. Few will succeed, but not many Not like this, not by comparison. You might think you're succeeding with using synthetic fertilisers and insecticides and fungicides. Folks, I don't really spray at all. I talk about spraying and I share you some great tips for those who are really struggling otherwise. And I've got a few trees that have had a real tough time and I still haven't sprayed them and I'm just letting them push through. What I do is work on the soil, keep feeding the soil, compost, superfood, our planting mix. But if you need to, reach for something natural and organic. You don't want to go with the chemicals. It just doesn't work. It's a short-term fix for a long-term problem, and that's not what we're here for. We're here for a long-term good time and an easy time and a well-connected time with Mother Nature, and that's what we're doing. Even though it's above ground, she's in there. She's doing her job. And let me get this wonderful big malacca. All right. Now he's going to go on the south side because that side there's the north side, and I'm going to plant him. You know what? I'm going to plant him just here. Just in this spot there. Look at that. We've already got little not curl grubs, butchie boys I call them. And see it's still a little bit dry underneath, so we've got to hydrate all this again to make sure we get the moisture in. I guarantee you this will start to absorb the moisture. Once it gets hydrated, it'll be hard pressed for it to dehydrate. I guarantee you on that one there. Now I've planted that, I didn't plant it deeper. Normally I'd plant it a bit deeper. Don't need to, that's okay. Let it settle in like that. I've just planted some basil, sweet basil, but a little bit on the yellow side. They'll green up soon enough. I've got some flat leaf parsley. I stuck an eggplant in there, bonica, another parsley, the tomatoes here, and then I'm going to throw some seeds in here of corn. I know some of you are thinking, this late? Vasily, you've never planted this late. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like now's the time to start planting. This is, for me, for where I am. I know some of you, if not a lot of you, have already got lots of corn growing and quite high in fact, but for me down here, it's only just starting the season for me. I'm watering it now with the EcoButch and Liquid Gold that's been sitting in the wheelbarrow. And you can go straight, well, not like that. You can go straight over the top, but don't drown the poor thing, well, with mulch that is. So, make sure you liquid feed them too, just to kickstart them. Just like that. And if it rains again tonight, like it's predicting, a bit more, well, this will get a deep soaking and the nutrients locked up in these in the mulch is going to leach through there, and all those worms down below, I'm telling you, we'll come back in about a week or so, and I guarantee you they'll all be coming up to the surface to get into the new feed. That's all the fresh stuff that we've added in there. So if you haven't top dressed your garden beds and you need to, do it this way. This is the way that I found to be the most successful, and I know a lot of you who've done it have been successful as well. So it works in all regions of Victoria or whatever parts of Australia you are. Unfortunately, planting mix isn't available interstate yet. It will be soon. But for now, for those in Victoria, if you're needing some planting mix, go on our website. We've got our Boxing Day special still running all the way through till the end of the week. Great specials across the board with free shipping across Australia for everything online. Obviously not the planting mix. T's and C's apply. FasiliesGarden.com for everything you need, and an amazing garden bed like this. Well, this one's going to become one, just like the rest. From me, Vasily, Maresi.